And ladies and gentlemen, we are live. It is Monday, August 8th, 2022, and this is the Voice of Reason podcast. My name is Sean Phillips, joined alongside my two co-hosts, Mr. Andy Van Beber and Travis Kirkendall. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing on this lovely Monday evening?
Fan-freaking-tastic. I don't know if you guys saw it on. You guys probably didn't get a chance to get on Facebook, but we did the double feature tonight. We did 7:30. We did Bryson versus Dad, and God, I can't beat this kid at anything anymore. And
wow,
that game you saw me streaming last night, Sean, that Outlaws game was a game that was made in 1997. And it's an old LucasArts game. And the first two times we played it, I beat him. And I haven't beat him since. And granted, we've only been playing this game for about a week and a half.
He's already scoring.
Oh God, he just like last night. It just,
What's the next game?
I don't know. I get to choose. I don't know. I mean, unless I plan on doing a slam dunk contest, I don't know what I'm going to beat him at. So.
Lots of options here. You got to think of something to get the winning streak back on.
Dude, I haven't.
Travis, how was your week? How's the how's the new pup?
Oh.
Well, my dad came up this weekend, so he got to meet my dad's dog, Odie, and my dad got to meet Lupo, of course, and it was cool. Lupo is a full-time job. He's a pain in the ass. He likes to chew and bite everything. He understands no after about the 20th time.
So awesome.
But he's an absolute blessing. We love him to death.
Yeah.
He's 100% part of the family, and we wouldn't trade him for anything. It's been totally worth it.
That is so good.
Welcome to parenthood. Welcome to parenthood. That's what it is.
Yeah, right. It is, dude. It's like having an actual baby.
It's good. I tell everybody.
You have to watch him 24/7.
I tell everybody, man, before you have kids, if you can handle. People think I sound ignorant when I say this, but if you can handle any dog from the retriever household, retrievers are by far the best dogs when it comes to loyalty and everything, to me, right there with pit. But you've got to work. Gosh, you got to work for it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they definitely test you for sure. But they are the most loyal, in my opinion.
Good evening, Mr. Vincent. We see Mike Vincent, Officer Michael Vincent, who was in our first season, joining us tonight. Good evening, Mr. Vincent.
Before I forget. I would like to, if he's listening or if he ends up listening, I would like to wish my old man, Murray Phillips, a happy big 6-0 birthday.
Murdog!
And officially crossed the point of no return.
Murdog!
Yep, so I hope you guys colonoscopy and prostate exam lined up and getting used to real adulthood here pretty soon.
Oh my gosh. I want to tell you something. I don't wish that on my worst enemy at all.
I know a couple guys that wish they could get one every other day. So, the more you know.
Don't worry, your time's coming.
Man, yeah. Believe me, when you get it, man, it's not. We did that after I had my prostate exam. No joking though, fellas. We've talked about this before though, but guys, once you get over 40, it is. Which one of you guys was telling me about? Was it one of you guys or somebody else was telling me that a guy that they had known who had it, he had went so long without getting a test, and he was like, was that you, Travis, that was telling me that story? Somebody was telling. I thought it was on the podcast, maybe not. But the guy had like gotten into his like mid 40s or 50s before he even got his first test, and by the time he got tested, he was like stage 4 and all this stuff, and he's like, well, hell, whatever, and just all this stuff. And guy, I mean, it it's not anything.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So, how was your weekend, Sean?
My weekend was good. It was kind of busy. A lot of moving parts. We've got the event at Irvine for the wrestling show tomorrow. So this weekend was good though. What do we do? It wasn't a crazy weekend. We did some shopping or looking around at IKEA. We're doing some renovations to. Tony has been hired as a interior designer to kind of help square away the office facilities, and so we kind of looked at desks and shelves and did some stuff like that. Went to the park with Jam. She got the royal treatment at her favorite place in town yesterday, or was that yesterday?
You talking about the cookie? Yeah. Are you talking about the cookie joint?
Cookie place, or the day before yesterday? Yeah, we went to the cookie place.
That was
so the last, so not last time, but the time before that. We went, and they love they love our daughter there. They love her so much, and we went, and so every time we go there, they always give her stickers and more stickers and more. Well, then last time they second to last time ago we went, whatever. We went, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to watch us make the cookies?" So she got to go back there, and she was kind of in awe and got to watch them make the cookies. Well, this time when we went, they let her make her own cookies. So she got to go, and they let her, put everything on it. And so she loved that place. But they love her. It was actually the funniest part about it was there were a lot of people there when we got there. So there was like a couple there, and they were waiting. Or actually, they had like this big cookie sampler that they were munching on. And so Jam goes back, she does that, and like 5 or 6 other people come in to order. And then they let Julian walk back with her little box and like, show mom and dad your cookies. And so she lifted it up, and we saw it, and then like, the whole store, like the staff, the people up front, they all started clapping and giving her a round of applause.
Wow.
And she loved it. Like, she's beaming. She had so much fun.
So do you have...
They're awesome there. Thanks to them, we have to go back at least once a week, which...
I have...
Better or worse, it's either... Yeah.
I have to ask, how big are your man boobs now? How big are your man boobs?
These titties, I'm slowly surpassing... Tony right now. I think,
dude.
I think when we go out and about, I think when I go to the beach next week, I'm gonna have to wear the bikini top.
Because you were like saying I gained. I remember yesterday you were like saying I gained 20 pounds. I gained 20 pounds.
Yeah, I gained 20 pounds, and the next day I shit out about 19. So we're the over under. The over under is getting there.
Walking sideways through doors over here.
Oh my gosh!
What are you looking at my gut for?
Hey! My eyes are up. My eyes are up here. Hey!
Exactly.
So
things are going great. Lot of transitional stuff still that we're getting done, but yeah. How about you guys? Anything good besides the extra video games and doggy daycare?
We're doing the annual Van Beber annual camping trip this coming Thursday, I believe, and I sent a video to the boys on our group chat. So last year we went in this tent it's supposed to be a 4-person tent, and so me and my 2 Chinese children could not adequately sleep comfortably in this thing. So I went out and bought for my birthday gift. My birthday's on Friday, and so we this Friday. And so I bought a 10-person tent. This thing is 14 by 16. And so you could park a Buick literally inside this thing, and it is
massive.
It's massive, but we're going to go either Wednesday or Thursday. I haven't made up my mind yet, so we're going to do that. We go camp on the creek bed, and it's the real deal. So, but
speaking of tents, we can kind of shuffle into one of hippies' favorite pastime to partake in a sense, camping out there. And we're going to talk a little bit about that Khalifa Kush, the Purple Haze. We're going to talk about good old Aunt Mary Jane. All right. For those of you that live under a rock, we are talking about marijuana.
Pot, weed, ganja, Mary Jane.
The discussion comes from, if you guys haven't been following along with the news, professional basketball player, WNBA star Brittney Griner recently, or a couple months ago, was detained and arrested in Russia
back in
for
February.
Possession of oil, cannabis oil, if I'm not mistaken, and a very, very small amount. But as it goes with the current crisis in Russia, and with the political political aggression that we are facing with them, what could have potentially just been a no thing turned into a big something. But one thing we are also seeing, at least that I've read, is that the sentence, which she ended up getting a 9-year prison sentence in Russia. What I'm actually seeing from what I'm reading is that's actually, even for Russian citizens,
that's
not
hardcore.
Uncommon sentence. That's what I've read, and it could be way off, but like they crack down pretty hard on marijuana. And I'm seeing that like over there, 9 years is pretty average for what a lot of folks are getting, at least from what I've read. But I'm not there, so I don't necessarily know if that's 100% true or not before I put that out there.
Well, what I'm seeing worldwide though, and doing some.
So I don't. What do you guys think? Do you think 9 years is too harsh, or do you think
for less than an ounce? Well, it was less than an ounce, right? I don't think I'm mistaken on that. I think it was less than an ounce. And Vinny, I don't know if you're still on or not. If you could comment in the chat there, what like county governments and everything, how much you can have here in the States. I don't know if Mike Vincent's still on or not, but I mean, 9 years for something that you could basically, I mean, literally, if you dropped it out, you could keep in the palm of your hand.
No. I don't know about that. But I mean, I will say, by American standards, 9 years is absolutely ridiculous.
My happy ass could walk down the street and buy an ounce right now if I wanted to.
Mike Vincent says here in Missouri, less than 35 grams is a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor.
Less than 35 grams.
God. And
so you can see the difference right there.
I gotta keep on. I gotta look and see how much she was caught with. Let me keep on talking. I gotta see how much she was caught with. I gotta get that exact.
Well, yeah, I don't know what other. I'd have to see a list that shows, like, I'm sure you could Google it, like what countries are marijuana friendly, which ones aren't. Because I know, obviously, just look at the past 10 years, how much it's changed and how it's definitely more accepted now than it was 20 years ago. Wouldn't you agree, Sean?
Oh, 100%. I mean, and that's everywhere. Even in your red states where it's not even medicinally legal yet, you're starting to see like less and less of a battle against it. And I think it's just because they understood, like, eventually it's gotten to the point now where people kind of realize, like, marijuana really isn't like the drug we need to be fighting. And it just, potheads are less of a burden on the American taxpayer than putting these people away in prison. I mean, one of the big issues that, we as Americans are kind of looking at when it comes to marijuana is that there are people still in states where marijuana is now recreationally legal that are in the prison system.
She can just,
and again, things get kind of, go ahead.
She had 2 cartridges for personal use for her vape, which contained 0.252 grams of cannabis and 0.45 grams of hash oil. So we're talking to 0.25. So we're talking what, 70.7 grams. 0.7 grams.
That's crazy.
Mike Vincent also said,
I'm looking through here, and
he says you literally in Missouri you get a citation and they take it away. When I was looking though, you were asking about the, what, less than a day's drive over there in good old Amsterdam. I think I posted this, on the history of recreational drugs. In Amsterdam, and it was I'd have to look up. I think it was 1976. They basically, anything short of, you can't have. They like marijuana but they put a cap on like heroin and crap like that. But yeah, 9 years is ridiculous, and the fact that she, I'm never going to partake myself, but at the same time, I've been in, and I'm sure you have too, Sean and Travis. I've been to my share of concerts where I've gotten more secondhand marijuana intake than I don't know.
What? No, 100%. Yeah, go ahead, Travis.
I went to there's a band called Slightly Stupid. I love them. I love them. I was at a concert in Alaska, and they came up for the Alaskan State Fair, and literally the whole crowd, man, just smoke, haze in the air. People are taking blunts and throwing it on the stage for the singers and stuff. I never seen anything like it. It was crazy.
I remember I went to a J. Cole concert.
Oh, there you go. And there you go, right there.
There was so much pot. Like, that was the first time I'd been to shows where I'd seen people smoking. That was the first time I'd been to a show where I saw like an actual haze over the crowd from all the joints being smoked up in that place. And I can only imagine what something like Woodstock would have looked like.
Oh my God.
Google Maps or something, if they would have been able to hit it.
If it would have been around. Yeah. What do you, so is it, because as a child of the 80s, and I sent this to you guys in the research thing, as a child of the 80s, okay, I grew up with, of course, Ronald Reagan's wife, Nancy, started the Just Say No campaign, and it was targeted at marijuana. And to me, and I've always been raised, not to partake alcohol, and it's not to brag about or anything like that, but I have no desire and I have no interest in. But to me, when I was in high school, it was just like the weirdos were the potheads. And now, as a teacher in the 2000, call them the 20s, as a teacher in the 20s now, it's more commonplace. And I think it's more socially acceptable, and it's, I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
It's definitely more mainstream. You got to think though, with states legalizing it, how could it not be more mainstream? So many people for the longest time wouldn't use it, or at least say they used it because it was deemed illegal. Now that it's, legal, more people are partaking in it. And so I think that's why you're seeing it more of it's definitely more of a normal thing. I guess it's still kind of taboo in some places here in the U.S. It's got to be a big secret. No, he's just like, there's a big stigma against it still in some spots, but I think for the most part, it's definitely becoming more of a, like you said, a mainstream acceptable thing.
A couple of, and this is something that Michael Vincent, who's a friend of the show, and he's a county officer. We've had him on before. He said, just my opinion with it in my line of work, if they would pass it being legal for recreational use, it would make my job 10 times easier to not have to worry about it and put our sole focus more on other drugs. That's kind of getting ahead of where we're going, but one of the, and we'll discuss some more pros and cons here in a little bit, but in that field of pros and cons, I think it was, if you call it the war on drugs and you're looking at marijuana as we're losing that war. We've lost that war. And the main argument that was put out when I first started teaching was why would, and I remember when I did the election of 2000 between Bush and Gore, and they asked us during one of those MTV Rock the Vote town hall meetings. And this lady got up and said, why can't we push for the legalization of marijuana? And Al Gore just was like, and this was a Democrat back in 2000 who said, this is to us, legalizing any drug would be setting a dangerous precedent and all this other stuff. And marijuana is a doorway drug. And that became the new catchphrase. Marijuana was the doorway drug because once you try marijuana, then you're not going to, fill that void, I guess is the word I want to use. And you just go on into other drugs, which I think that's up for debate too.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I think that's a load of crap because I've never wanted to try crystal meth or do heroin, like ever. Never had a desire. And even in the, times where marijuana has, been partaken in, I've never been like, this just doesn't do it for me anymore. I would just love to just sit back and Kurt Cobain it and just shoot some heroin directly in the old keister. Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to do like some research, but I'm pretty sure that so back in the day, that one of the biggest anti-marijuana groups was the lumber industry, wasn't it?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
That was.
And then that narrative, because it was just always known as cannabis, and then they gave it the name marijuana for it to sound more like Hispanic.
Yes.
And scary for
yes.
The honkies up north.
Well, let me read. So you say that Mexican immigrants entered the United States in record numbers following the 1910 Mexican Revolution. They reportedly introduced Americans to smoking marijuana for recreational purposes. In the same time, sailors and West Indian immigrants brought marijuana from the Caribbean into North America via New Orleans. And in the 20s and the 30s, recreational cannabis use became associated with jazz music. So then there's this guy whose name was Harry Anslinger, who was the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, who wanted to associate cannabis with demeaning or racist stereotypes about Mexican immigrants. And so this was a report that he had filed, and this is from a quote in 1931, and this is a straight quote. There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the United States, and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana use. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. And then they talked a little bit. His efforts were aided by a 1936 anti-marijuana propaganda film called Reefer Madness, and they've got a picture of this. I need to find a way to post, but this picture, Reefer Madness. Women cry for it, men die for it. Reefer Madness. So,
I wonder how much of the stigmas and BS that goes with this came from that kind of stuff in that era. I would assume almost all of it.
Well,
propaganda.
So here's another interesting piece of history. So then, the first Hispanic mayor of New York, Fierro LaGuardia, who LaGuardia Airport is named after, he got a commission together in 1938 to do research on marijuana. This is one of the first actual collegiate research done on marijuana in this country. And this report was released in 1944. So the 1944 LaGuardia report concluded that the practice of smoking marijuana does not lead to addiction. Marijuana is not the determining factor in the commission of major crimes. The publicity concerning the catastrophic effects of marijuana smoking in New York City is unfounded. And of course, then this commissioner of the Anslinger just said, well, that's a load of crap. And then, the negative connotation then came about, I think really mainstream was in the 1960s then with the hippie movement, and, the Summer of Love, what was the Summer of Love, 67? And, to me, that's when it really took on, and it created this counterculture to where it was, it was seen as something bad. Mike Vincent says marijuana is the least of our worries in this time we are living in. He said, yes, we still have to police it, but you would not believe the people I deal with on the daily that look me straight in the eyes and say, yeah, I've overdosed on fentanyl about 6 times now. He said, there's a town down here close to where I live. He said he'll leave it unnamed that literally put vending machines all over town filled with free Narcan for people to walk up and get it at will.
What the? Oh.
Free Narcan, ladies and gentlemen.
That's what's so frustrating for me. Anytime we there's a discussion of like marijuana and like, oh, should it happen or should it not? It's all bullshit to me because we have this huge opiate crisis going on, like, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And there's no like action from our leadership about it. Like, it seems like nothing's being done about it. It's just getting worse.
And
yet we're still having a debate on whether marijuana is okay or not.
So
like, people aren't out here ODing on weed. Like,
well, that's the thing. Okay. And so I did. And again, I'm not an advocate of marijuana. I'll get that out there, but everything that I've come across, and there has never been a documented, recorded case of anyone dying from a marijuana overdose ever. And what we're seeing now,
I know a lot of people that have been so high they thought they were going to die of the marijuana.
Yeah, I mean,
that's different.
Yeah, and I think that marijuana, to me, it's like this. I liken, marijuana has its pros and cons. Okay, when I go down through the list, and we can touch on a few of these. I sent this out to the guys today. The pros and cons of excuse me, of doing marijuana. So you say, okay, is it going to kill me? No. But it has just the same effects as smoking anything else. I mean, vape, you're going to do damage to your lungs. If you're doing it on a repetitive basis, you smoke cigarettes, you smoke marijuana, you smoke vape, it's going to have the same effects. But as far as, the addiction side, go ahead.
Quick.
Go ahead.
They also, especially now that it's legalized and these dispensaries are opening up everywhere, they have so many other options. There's so many different edibles and things like that won't affect the lungs, and
yes,
you want to smoke anything. And they're making it definitely more general public marketing, I guess you could say, with that. But continue on.
No, now with marijuana, and you guys we've talked about this. We've talked about this on this podcast before. Illinois now is entering year 3, I believe. Okay. And the one thing that is hard to argue against, they tax the holy hell out of marijuana here in Illinois. Maybe we can look this up here or what the actual tax rate is on it, but I know I may be over the limit when I say close to 100%, but
it's pretty steep.
And yeah,
I had to look up the rate.
But one of the arguments that people give on the pros and cons is that Michael said it here. Legalizing marijuana would end the costly enforcement of marijuana laws and free up police resources. Like we're saying, I mean, we have like you said, Travis, this opioid crisis is way out of hand. I never thought I could say the day to anybody, I know where I can buy heroin. Okay? And it's not something that I'm proud of, but I can tell you right now who I can call to if I was so messed up that I wanted to go get heroin or if I wanted to get fentanyl. I know an individual here in Louisiana who I can contact, and it's somebody who I've known for years, former alumni, who deal in it. And it's the thing that people don't, I mean, I understand Pike County is not the mecca of making money, but it's quick and easy money to them. And so it's, hey, I've got this, I can sell this. And we're not really looking at what the outcome is going to be of this, So, I mean, yeah.
What's frustrating for me with that, and I think this could be a whole episode in itself. It's people always think about the cities, but from what I've seen, it really is these small rural towns that are just getting devastated by this crisis. Like, I'm not going to call out names or nothing, but I can go to a couple Walmarts near your area, and I can just see it on people. It's so obvious, and it's a pretty good amount of people. At least it seems like it's more and more every day.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating that the leadership has just completely seemingly ignored this issue.
I don't know how to phrase this the proper way. What is it going to take for our federal government to recognize that the war, that we need to change the focus on I mean, every once in a great blue moon, we'll hear the opioid crisis. Joe Biden will stumble through a speech and say something about it. I never remember Trump saying anything about it. I mean, and wouldn't you say this is kind of within the last 10 years that this has become a growing thing?
100%.
Does that sound reasonable, about 10 years, 10 years time span?
Well, I want to say, from my memory, obviously we know when people hit hard times, they turn to hard things. And I know, like, when the recession kind of hit, and when, like, I'm speaking for the area that we know, and this was, small town Pike County was pretty much, a lot of the country. In these, like, smaller industry towns where the economy is driven by a single business, like a large business or an industrial business, and when that business went away, a lot of these towns kind of got overran by unemployment and hard drug issues. Like, look at Clarksville. Like, it was the same one family that was cooking up all the crystal for everyone in the area.
We don't need to say, we all know who. Yeah.
Members of that family have been arrested over and over. Arrested, released. Like catching fish. And the issue was, like, at least I think, that when that happened, and industry went away, that.
Uh-oh. Did we lose him?
I think we did. His video was cutting out for me when he was talking.
Sean, he'll get back in here in a second. Are you there, Sean?
There we are.
There you are.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that you guys heard.
No, go ahead and finish that thought. You were on a roll there.
Okay, so when you had this, like, these industries shut down, and these towns kind of got run over. I don't know how far you guys got, but, like, Clarksville, again, for example, it was like one family that was cooking everything, and again, catch and release, kick like fish in a pond. Because the local law enforcement can only do so much, and it really hit these towns hard. Like Hannibal has FBI members, like full-time FBI members in Hannibal, because drugs are so bad there.
Yes.
And
the bureau actually has a office in Hannibal. It's there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it seems to like increase. Like look at and not only when you take these hard drugs come again more issues. If you look at in Pike County or Lincoln County, I guess no joke, my sister and her husband had their catalytic converter stolen from their truck on their employment property.
Mm-hmm.
The next couple days later, that same couple, that the meth head fucking pieces of shit, like scumbags, stole around 40 to 50 catalytic converters from a used car lot.
And they got
that same week, and they got caught not because of local PD, but because bounty hunter was hired and fucking found out where these people were, and then local PD were called.
That by the way, that I think we're talking about the same one that ended in a chase that right outside town here.
Yes.
And they rolled and actually we were going up to the Y over the weekend, YMCA, and the two Pike County Sheriff's Department. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I read about that in the paper. They were banged up pretty good.
Yeah. And here's the thing, my personal take is, I believe there's a different way to approach hard drugs and how we handle, like the drug related incidents. Like that's different. I'm referring to getting people actual help as opposed to just jailing someone. Like, I think there's a lot more that can be done. You hit the distributors hard, and the consumers you seek help for. But, if states said, screw it, let's let, the people have what they want. But the federal government, here's the issue. Look at Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade overturning means that there's no chance for marijuana to ever be federally legal because, fuck, if it ain't in that Constitution, that they're going to have a hard time doing it. But then if they do pass, if they make marijuana federally legal, which I want more than anything, because as a National Guardsman, even though I'm with a state militia, I'm still property of the federal government. And so I am not allowed to legally partake in marijuana, which is a load of shit, because I can guarantee you can ask almost any vet, anyone that's gone through PTSD, I can guarantee you they have their card for marijuana.
So
right? It's crazy. It's crazy. One day I hope, will I be dead? Probably. But I hope states like Missouri get their head out of their ass, because just think like look at Colorado. They had a surplus in their education budget.
Yeah.
You look at Missouri, where for some reason our locally elected officials can't seem to find extra money for our teachers. I'll tell you where to fucking find it. You find it in a fat ass doobie that you plop in someone's mouth and just say, hey man, you can spark up. It's just going to cost you a little.
That's a really good point. I wanted to bring it up with the teacher episode. Like, if we're talking about trying to find funding for like teachers to pay our education system more, I think that's a great channel to do it.
And here's where with funding, with any kind of funding, especially for education, that they find a way to slush it around. It's kind of like when they had when this was in '96, when they wanted to, legalize. This is when they wanted to legalize casinos in Missouri, before your guys' time or right at your guys' time. And the whole thing was, well, the money generated from these casinos, these riverboat casinos, will go towards education. Okay? And it's going to give such a boost to education. What ended up happening was, when that money that money started to pour in, believe me, that money started to pour in, and then our state legislature said, well, we've got all this money coming in from the boats. Now we can pull some of the allocated money that we already had in education. We can pull that out and put that somewhere else. And so basically it was just done as a way to say, well, we're going to, replace this with this. So when anybody ever talks to me about, okay, well, we can use the funding from legalization of marijuana to help out, I respectfully kind of disagree with that one though, guys, because I'm just like, I've heard all this before. Now, if you can keep everybody's hands off of it and actually say, we're going to use this for this, okay, then I'm all for it. And I mean, who knows who knows where the money is going in Illinois with all the taxes. Yeah. I mean, we don't know where that's going. And I wanted to kind of go back.
That is a problem.
I did want to kind of go back. I don't know if you guys watch the Full Send podcast or not. I catch it every now and then. On Friday, so Elon Musk was on there on Friday. And Elon Musk had this whole hell-bent thing against Joe Biden. And he's like, why are we doing so much to try to release this person? You know, he's like, I have my sympathy towards Brittney Griner, but why are we working hard to get these people to get her out of jail when we have this, this problem here in the United States? And and what he did was, and I actually looked this up, he mentioned this report that was released in 2020, that in 2018 there were 700,000 marijuana related arrests, and this was apparently the last year that's available. And he said that accounts for 43.2% of all drug arrests, significantly more arrests than any other drug. And over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, to me, and I'm sure, I don't know if Mike's still on or not, but I'll even say this. So I'll tell you this story. When 1995, my sophomore year of college, I did a internship with the Army Corps of Engineers. I worked with the River Ranger Division out of Quincy. And okay, Benny's still here. And so my job was, I got paid decent money to do this intern. It was an internship / job, because I was kind of toying around before I went into education. I was kind of toying around with law enforcement. And so I got this job, and I worked I worked 9 to 5 through the week, but then on the weekends, we worked 2/12s, so we worked 2 to 2. And I don't know about you, Vinny, but I would take a pothead, or trying to arrest a pothead 10 times a day before I try to arrest somebody who had been drinking too much. Because we had this one instance. So we had gotten complaints that there was this dude who had been pulling around his kid on a tube on the river, and he was just zigzagging all over the place. And he was operating a boat under the influence of marijuana. And we pulled him over, and we found roach clip. We found his roach clip, and and he just said, "You know what? You got me." He said, "Just take me in." He said, "Yeah, I pulled my kid around. I tried to be safe. I was operating this boat under the influence." Okay. So then there was this other instance then where we were at a boat ramp, and this guy and his buddy had been out running their speedboat all day, and they're pulling it up, and this guy throws some trash out of his boat and throws it on the ground, and pick it up, and starts to walk away. When the guy who I was with was this big time environmentalist, and he's going to go over and talk to him. And he comes back to our vehicle, and he says, that guy's drunk. I said, all right. And so this dude hops on a crotch rocket. We went ahead and left the boat ramp. We go across the boat ramp. Long story short, the dude runs from us. We get Adams County Sheriff's Department. We get the Quincy Police Department, and to aid us in stopping this guy. And it took like 4 or 5 officers to handcuff this guy, because he did not, and he was drunk. And that's a small sampling for me. Mike says someone who has been drinking and is unruly, or someone who is high on meth or heroin or anything like that, are a pain to deal with, as opposed to someone who is high on marijuana.
100%.
No, 100%. Like I worked in the bar industry for years and years and years, and 100 times out of 100, I would rather be like, hey man, you smell too much like pot, as opposed to like, hey man, you've been drinking too much tonight. Like it's just a different, you react differently. And people that are high are way better to deal with than people that are drunk. Like there was a night we had a guy who was like, this was when I worked at the arcade bar in St. Louis, who was actually he tried showing up for a job interview and he was smoking weed. He had weed on him and he was smoking it. And they're like, "Do you have a card for that?" And he's like, "No." Like, okay, well, you can't smoke in here. He's like, "Oh, okay, my bad, guys, my bad." And like tried talking his way through the interview. Well, then he had been in there again and got drunk and got thrown out and tried fighting people. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. I've worked like tons of different events, different style things, and alcohol can always be the precursor to trouble.
Yep.
Very rarely, very very rarely am I ever like, I'm worried about how this person's going to react because they're too stoned. It's more like, great, now I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this guy out of bed like for the rest of the evening, So, yeah, it's a weird, it's been a weird stigma, and it's the same thing like. I know, like my parents personally, like growing up, they're like, don't smoke pot, don't smoke pot. Now they're like, they're not, they don't partake, but they're indifferent, like they don't care now. And I just think like as we, as the times kind of change, I really do think that's kind of the general consensus, as people are under the understanding like it's really not that bad. Sure, you might not want to catch your 15, 16-year-old with it, every day of the week. But in the same token, like, would you rather have your kid like drunk trying to sneak out, or would you rather have him baked playing Call of Duty?
Can I play let me play devil's advocate for you guys just for a second on the other side of this. So let's go with the doorway drug argument just for a brief moment. If we would see federal legislation, which Sean mentioned earlier, highly unlikely, but if we were to see legislation like that, what would we be entering a slippery slope of where more things would? I mean, if we set the bar here and say, okay, we're not going to legalize pot. Okay, well now we're going to legalize. I mean, do we start going? I mean, are we living in a time where we're going to be in a slippery slope of something like this, where the window starts getting a little bit larger? Do you think?
I think if we continue to see like legalization of marijuana, and you're already starting to see this one, you're going to start seeing more legalization of like psychedelics. They're already starting to use like mushrooms and stuff for like treatments for like depression, anxiety, and other stuff. And it's becoming more of a, I would say psychedelics. It's becoming way more mainstream too, because you got guys like Rogan that like always talk about how they're doing mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think, yeah, you see a little more broad legalization, I guess, not just marijuana, but things like that as well. I don't know if I don't see a legalization of things like meth, heroin, or that. Though. I don't. If we do, it'd be a very long time until that happens.
I think one of the big things that kind of needs to be like the idea of not necessarily legalization, but decriminalization.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at nations like, and again, we can't compare apples to oranges, but
right.
when I think about like Sweden, where, hard drugs are decriminalized over there, but their system is different. They don't go about arresting people unless they are distributors. So if you are caught selling, meth or heroin or fentanyl, whatever it might be out in the streets, you get in trouble for selling. If you're caught like purchasing or using, then you're sent to rehabilitation. They don't just arrest you; they send you to rehab. And what they have found over there, at least, is that for like it costs the taxpayer less to put someone through rehab as opposed to putting someone in prison.
Agreed.
And the thing is, if like, and people are going to say, I can already hear the old lady, or just the guys sitting at the bar at the end of a thing are like, I don't want to be paying for no motherfuckers, do crystal meth. I don't want to be paying for him to do heroin. I ain't paying that kind of shit. I ain't paying for it. It's like, okay, well, your taxes are still going to pay for that person to ride in an ambulance because they're probably uninsured. Mm-hmm. You're going to pay for their hospital stay. Mm-hmm. If they get arrested, then you're going to pay for them to sit in jail. If they get prosecuted, then you're going to pay for them to sit in prison. So would you rather deal with all that, or would you rather have them have access to a medical facility that will give them the purest form of the drug that they're seeking under supervised medical care? And then if they, want to do that, well, then guess what? It's free. It doesn't cost them anything. And then they go through rehabilitation. So it costs less than all the other things previously stated. And maybe after a year or so, these people get off the drug. Like the numbers in Sweden, the numbers of people, like they don't have a heroin problem on their streets. They don't have a heroin problem. Because they give people heroin and then they give them treatment. And the numbers of people that are going and returning year after year continue to go down. So, I mean, it works. Mind you, they're a nation the size of, a couple of our states. So there'd have to be a different approach. And unfortunately, like our sanctuary cities, like San Francisco, like they just don't, and Seattle, haven't executed correctly. They're just like, nah, fuck it. You do this. We'll send you with a ticket and get you on your way, and don't really give a shit. Like people shitting in the streets, people just throwing needles out. It's just, it's not even a ticket. And so the approach just needs to be done differently. And I don't understand. Again, for me, I'm like, this ain't rocket science, guys. But, some people are just, there's always going to be a disagreement. Well, and until we can find some kind of common ground, we're kind of stuck.
So I want to go back though, and I want to kind of tie up this discussion though on the other side of marijuana, and this is medicinal uses. And I mean, as a history teacher, I can also tell you this: before we talk about medicinal, marijuana hemp was a staple crop in this country for the first 130, 120 years of our existence. George Washington, I don't know if you guys saw that. I mean, George Washington, and I read an entry from his journal. He journaled everything about his farm, and I mean, he talked about, he used hemp for ropes. They made fishing nets out of it. It was so durable and sturdy. Okay, so but beyond that, okay, so I'm not going to go through every one of these, but just listen to this, okay? Here's where medicinal marijuana, people get relief or kind of alleviate the effects of. We'll start with this: AIDS, HIV, Alzheimer's, arthritis, dealing nausea from chemotherapy, helping with chemotherapy, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease, epilepsy, glaucoma, hepatitis C, migraine, spasticity. On and on and on and on and on. We had Travis. Remember we talked about Roe v. Wade a few weeks ago. And we had my friend Stephanie when we did the live on my porch. Mm-hmm. They have a daughter she has Angelman syndrome, and she has seizures just a lot, and they've weaned her off of this one drug that is, it's not I don't know what family drugs it's in, but it's hard on the system, and so they've been weaning her off of that, and so she started having more violent seizures. They upped her cannabis oil intake, and guess what? Seizures leveled off. To me, if you've got something out there that can be used for, we can go recreational, this is something that has been put out there for people to have. And the medical community has been trying, of course, Big Pharma has been trying, I'm sure, trying to, pass off medicinal marijuana. Oh, that's a crock of blah. but you see case after case after case. I remember watching a 60 Minutes episode one time about this guy who got medicinal marijuana for his Parkinson's. And this dude was just like, and then after 15 minutes, 15 minutes of smoking or ingesting marijuana, however he did it, tremors were significantly less. I mean, why aren't we, I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, what's the biggest, why, I mean, I know I pretty much said already, but the pharmaceuticals, but why aren't we looking more at medicinal uses for marijuana? Why isn't that more acceptable?
I think, and this is my opinion, and then Travis, you can fire away yours. My personal belief is we know the amount of benefits that there are, the great things that it can do. I'm a firm believer, and this isn't just with, things like marijuana. This is pretty much everything. But I'm a firm believer that a lot of, some of the old white, voters in this nation that contribute to your super PACs and are donors to your reps and their local congressmen, their local senators, and then even their national senators and their national congressmen. I think that, like what you talked about, the old smoking marijuana will make white women want to sleep with black men and all these other different things. I genuinely believe that until that generation is dead, there will still be, because of their money and influence that goes to our elected officials, I think that is kind of why it's off-putting. Is like where I live right now, West Hollywood. There's around where I live, there's some homeless people, not like a crazy amount. Other parts of the city, it's really bad. You want to know where there's not a fucking homeless person for miles? Beverly Hills, literally just down the street. It is completely different. Why? Because there's old money there that has been there for a long time, and they do things their way, and they don't want things to change. Like Beverly Hills is very different than the rest of Los Angeles, is what I have found. Mm-hmm. And why? Because that's where money talks, and they pay their premium to have it the way they want it. And I just think that around the world, where you might have some states where, let's say, it could be an issue that's like 50-50, you have these, I think of it like I go to, there's these people in Chesterfield, right? These old whites in Chesterfield that don't want people from St. Louis coming down to their restaurants and being able to smoke weed and be able to smoke outside, the places they like to go. And I just think until that influence dies out, we're going to kind of be stuck there. I genuinely think like we're about I wouldn't say a generation away, but maybe about like a half generation away. Like once we start to see our people, like the people in their like 60s, 50s, 40s now, I think they're going to be that new wave of like, let's fucking grow up and not, act like the devil's lettuce is really going to actually get you so hard. So that's my take. Travis, what do you?
No, you made a good point there. I think there's definitely a generational change that's happening, and I think with that, and especially with marijuana, I think that's going to be huge as far as possibly federal legalization. I really think, like you said, I think we're about a half generation away, if not one full generation. But I think that plays a big part. And I mean, number two, the government, I think it's not 100% legalized yet, because I think maybe they're still trying to figure out how they're going to monetize this, how they're going to get their money, and how it's going to run through the government to fund whatever. So maybe there's a plan and action behind the scenes we don't know about that could, for the future, maybe that's their plan. Who knows? But there's so much money to be made. I mean, surely eventually they're going to legalize it to make the money. I mean, the government needs money, right? They love to spend it. Why wouldn't they do this?
I'm posting right now. I'm adding to our page the movie poster I was talking about, the Reefer Madness. I just added it I just added it. So if you guys go, you have to check this out. I mean, it's absolutely that we.
Yeah, I think they'll watch that.
Yeah. So, but the discussion is, like you said, is ongoing. And we have to address we have to address the elephant in the room at some time. At some time, I will agree with you guys to that point that say, yeah, you know what? Let's get away from the marijuana debate and let's, like you were saying earlier, Sean. Let's talk about. I mean, I know exactly what family you're talking about in Clarksville. I know what family you're talking about in Clarksville that cooks the meth. And then there's still.
Yep.
And I mean, I can take you to the place. Well, I used to be able to take you to the place where they were cooking it. And the thing is, it's not a big city. It's not just a big city problem anymore. It's a everywhere problem. And the longer we keep on trying to get, I mean, there is a bill in the Missouri legislature right now that is to legalize marijuana in Missouri. And I know for a fact the Republicans are fighting it tooth and nail. Tooth and nail. And the only reason I keep up to date on this is because the guy who does the music for our intro and outro, Charlie Tadlock, he keeps me posted. I mean, he's been to a number of rallies up in, I mean, well-organized rallies. And he says, we go around, we talk, and he's like, Republicans are, they're fighting against this. And it's like you guys said, they represent that last bastion of that generation of people who are like, well, we're just got to keep the pot out of here. And let's focus on the real issue. Let's focus on the real problem at hand. If we want to get drugs that are destroying lives, let's take care of fentanyl. Let's take care of meth. I mean, heroin is, a drug from the 70s that's making a comeback. 60s, 50s that's making a comeback. So,
There was a 90s epidemic too, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. I had a kid, I've told you guys the story before. I had a kid who I went to school with who shot drugs up into his eyes. I'm not making this up. I swear on a stack of Bibles. He had needle tracks in his eyes that he was shooting up. I don't know what he was shooting up, but I think it was some form of heroin of some kind that he was shooting up into his eyes. And I'm like, why do you, they said, it just goes quicker to the brain bloodstream. And I'm like, Jesus. Dude, you are nuts. So, I mean, yeah. So.
Yeah, potheads don't do that.
No. But another fantastic.
No, potheads will sit there and try to see like how much vape they can get like in a car if they duct tape the windows to it. But that's about like
they'll sit there and think about it while eating a bag of chips.
And then they'll end up falling asleep and then not doing whatever they were.
Can you imagine?
It's kind of a beautiful
the legalization of pot? The legalization of pot would have a trickle down effect, and the manufacturing of Funyuns would just go off the chart.
I don't know why. Like and I bet money actually. I don't even know. I'm saying I don't know why. I bet money that if you looked at like, some of these campaign donations for marijuana, I guarantee you Frito-Lay and Mountain Dew, Pepsi Cola.
Yeah, they are. White Castles and yeah.
Oh yeah,
dude, I have done more. I'm serious about this. I have done more Uber and Lyft runs to guys who come in. And if you've never smelled pot before, if you've lived under a rock and you've never smelled it before, it has an I carry a little bottle of air freshener in my vehicle because it's true. I will pick up at least one somebody who's been smoking pot. Morning, afternoon, evening shift. I will always have one. And, man, can you stop by the gas station before we go back home? Yeah, man. Yeah. No problem. And he comes out. He awesome. Comes out with just that little, the little, grocery sack. And I mentioned Funyuns because that's what. That's why I notice more. I see Funyuns more than anything else. I'm like, does that like have, have an internet interaction with the pots. Oh man, Funyuns. Yeah. Anyway, good discussion. Good job.
Yeah, great talking to you guys again. As always, to our listeners, I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, thank you all so much for those that bought merch, and thank you guys again for those of you guys that continue to share the podcast, listen to the podcast. We are growing. We talked about it last week, but we are, which is a lot of fun. And I know we kind of keep saying it from time to time, and it can kind of sound like a broken record at times, but we are legitimately working on some different things to kind of make the show better, the format better, everything that we can do for our listeners and viewers' experience to be better. That's what we're working towards. We couldn't do it without you guys and your support. So again, thank you all so much. Please, if you got a grandparent that's about to kick the bucket and they've got one more vote in them, well, hey, you let them know. You let them know that come election season, when there's a proposition on the ballot, to get the old devil's lettuce ready for you. Don't let them croak before it's too late.
And I do want to give a shout out to Michael, the officer. Mikey stayed on with us all night tonight. He's given us a lot of great insight. Mike, thanks for so much for contributing tonight. And again, Murdog, we saw your comment earlier. Murdog said thank you for the shout out for birthday. So yeah, thank you for all the contribution tonight. We appreciate it.
Yep. You guys have a great rest of your week. I can't wait to talk to you all next week.
We'll see you.